And Ahmed Nassef, Group COO لدوبي. And just kind of looking at the many years of my life in the professional life, what I've done really has been kind of a thread around technology, around startup and growth businesses, and also around access products and solutions, right? So one of the things that I've built a passion for, really all of these, right? I love high growth environments. I love finding solutions, and I love helping people to access something that they don't necessarily have. And that's one of the great things about working in Egypt, working in Middle East and Africa and in emerging markets, is that many things that other economies, other markets take for granted are not yet here. And they're not an everyday thing here. And so I think that's very exciting to be able to bridge that gap, to help give people access to something that maybe in other parts of the world is like a given. It's almost like a human right? So for me, in my life, it's been around technology. So one of the companies that I was fortunate enough to be involved with is a company called Maktub.com. It was one of the first internet companies in the Arab region. So what we did back then, I joined it way back in 2000 when everybody was still on dial-up, and even those were a minority of people, right? A small number of people, and internet cafes and everything. And our vision back then was around giving people something in their own language, giving the Arabic-speaking population something that's digital, that they can use in their own language in Arabic, because at the time nothing was available in Arabic. There was Yahoo, there was MSN, but nothing was in Arabic. So we provided the first email service in Arabic and English. We built a little JavaScript application where you can type on an Arabic keyboard. We had the very first, we called it Mirsal, the first instant messaging in Arabic. We built digital media properties for news and sports and entertainment. And that grew to something that became very big. So when I started, we had very small number of people. By the time Yahoo came around and actually bought the company in 2009, I think we already had more than 16 million people in 2009. And we continued that double-digit growth of users. So I saw that with my own eyes, and I saw it again in a company called Souq.com that was also one of our companies that we built, and that a few years later, after the Yahoo exit, Amazon came in and bought Souq as well. So I've seen it happen in the internet space, in e-commerce, and I'm super excited now with DoPay because we're doing the same thing around financial inclusion, around getting all these millions of workers who don't have a bank account, getting them into the mainstream economy in Egypt, right? So, we have 50 to 60 million Egyptian workers who don't have a bank account today. That's the majority of workers in Egypt. They tend to be lower wage earners. They tend to be blue-collar workers, seasonal employees, young people just out of college. They don't have a bank account yet. And this is a major challenge for the Egyptian economy. It's something that's mentioned in the Egyptian government strategy for 2030, and the central bank strategy is if so much of the economy is a parallel economy, it becomes challenging for Egypt, right? And what we're trying to do is really bring all of these people who have jobs into the mainstream digital economy. We do this by solving a different problem for companies. Companies have a similar challenge. They don't know how to pay these employees efficiently. If they don't have a bank account, they can't transfer those funds to them. So they need to employ cash, right? They have to always transport cash every month from headquarters or from the bank over to all these different locations where the employees are. It's hugely inefficient. It's high risk. It's just a big headache for finance professionals, for HR professionals. So we do this we solve their problem by providing them with a digital payment platform for their payroll. We give that payroll platform to them, and within days and weeks, all of their employees can have DoPay cards, and they get their salaries on their cards. And for most of these employees, it's the first time they've ever gotten a payment card, a debit card or a prepaid card. So it's something new to them. They're used to cash, and now they're getting their salary on it, so they kind of have to use it. And they learn very quickly the benefits of having that card. Now they don't have to carry around their whole salary as soon as they get it in cash, so it can get lost or stolen, and they overspend. Now they can control their consumption of purchases and so on by using the cards. They can go to the ATM, withdraw just the money they need for today. They can go to the supermarket and pay with it with their card. So they get to understand how that, it's their first step into that mainstream economy and into the digital financial system. Yeah, I mean, it does work for all kinds of employees. And to your first question, right? It works with a full-time worker or a part-timer or a seasonal or a freelancer, temporary. So our mandate, and this is based on the Central Bank of Egypt's mandate for financial inclusion and financial literacy, right? This is a key part of the strategy that the Central Bank of Egypt has given to banks and fintechs to do. So it's our job to get them into this digital economy. So our system works regardless of what kind of employment, if it's a full-time employee or freelancer or however you want to phrase that beneficiary, right? So we do it with everything. And this is where I think we can do things a little bit differently and quicker than traditional banks, right? Because if I'm a temporary worker or if I'm a low-wage earner, most banks in Egypt, and this is the case all over emerging markets, right? Most banks are not really interested in lower wage earners, right? They are interested usually in that top 10% of workers, the white collar workers, because banks traditionally are not built, the infrastructure's not there to make it profitable for them to service these types of employees and these types of workers. So what we do is we're kind of we're a go-between, and we are an enabler for the banks. We do something for the banks that they can't really do on their own, and that is bring at scale a large number of these employees and get them these prepaid cards and get them into the bank system. And we also support the employees and we support their companies, right? So we kind of solve everybody's problem because we're built for scale. We're built to be able to serve from the get-go. The way we acquire customers, we don't have physical branches, right? The way we handle everything is either through a digital mean or through by phone. So from the get-go, as a lot of fintechs are, right? We have the advantage of being nimble, fast, efficient, and we're constantly working on improving that. You know, for me, if it's without risk, for me, it's no fun, right? That's just how I ended up kind of starting my career. A little bit about me, I'm Egyptian American, born in Egypt, but grew up my whole life in the United States. Went to school at UCLA and graduated in something that has absolutely nothing to do with business. So I majored in Near Eastern languages and cultures and Middle Eastern studies, and was always interested, as a lot of immigrants are in that first generation, in what's happening back here. So I wanted to study the region and where I'm from. And I worked the first half of my career in New York in technology companies. It was kind of by sheer luck. I started in marketing in a startup business. So I got that startup bug in New York. It was a cataloging company, and learned everything really by trial and error, right? I had the benefit of having great mentors and also having the room to take risks and to make some mistakes, because that's the best way to learn. No matter what you do, if it's in theory, it's completely different when you're doing it practically, right? So I had the benefit of learning from a lot of mistakes. Worked in a couple of technology companies in the US, and by sheer coincidence, I was listening to a radio program in the US, a news program called, on National Public Radio, and they were interviewing this guy named Samih Touqan, who had just founded a website in Jordan, in Amman. And he was talking about some of his challenges and how it's difficult to kind of get moving. I wrote him. He happened to have a trip to New York, and we met. And I think about like a month and a half or 2 months later, I was in Amman. I had never been outside of, I think I visited Cairo maybe once before since childhood, and that's when kind of my journey started in tech in the region. And for me, it's so exciting to be in a place where there is so much potential, right? I talked about the 50, 60 million people in Egypt who don't have a bank account yet, right? In a place like the United States, in more of these so-called mature markets, right? This is already, it's reached that kind of maturity level. There isn't as much to gain in terms of potential, right? We have so much potential here in Egypt and in emerging regions. So this is what drives me. This is what gets me super excited. And when I first met the founder of DoPay, his name is Frans van Iersel. He's a Dutch guy who's specialized in payments his whole life, and he's worked in Egypt many times and has lived in Egypt. I actually lived in Egypt more than I have. And when I first met him on a Zoom call, I was in Los Angeles, and he explained to me what he's doing with DoPay. For me, it sounded very similar to what I did with Maktoub, with what we did with Souk and these efforts. And it was all about giving people access. So I got super excited about it, and I wanted to roll up my sleeves and get involved. And again, a month and a half later, I was in Cairo, and this is the first time I'm actually working every day in Egypt. So it's been now about a year and a half, and it's been really great. It's been a great adventure, and I've been very lucky with a great team also that we have and that we continue to build. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, it's always the same. It always starts with a lot of coffee in the morning. So I'm an early riser, so I get up early, and there has to be a lot of caffeine. The method of the caffeine is not so important. So I have, whether it's espresso or drip coffee or French press or whatever it is, or Turkish coffee. So it's that's really critical for me to kind of function well. And from there, I enjoy going to the office. I try to be there as early as I can. And, a lot of times I'm one of the first people in the office, which I know in Egypt, it's still a challenge for, it's a different way of, starting early it doesn't come naturally maybe for us. But I think it's really important to kind of use that time, and it's a good focus time for everyone. It's really important for me. I'm a believer in the most critical part is this concept of really developing trust among the team and collaboration. Those two things have been the themes really that we've had in our company over the past year and a half. And part of it is modeling also leadership, not just for myself, but for all the leaders in DoPay. It's being accessible. It's not being hierarchical, right? It's one of the advantages of being a fintech and a technology company is we should be nimble, we should be fast, we should be open. We shouldn't be the typical hierarchy, like the manager comes in and everybody's scared that the manager's here and hard to talk to, hard to access. I think for our whole leadership team, that's not the case. It's really important that access is there, that people feel that they can at any time walk into the office and talk to them about problems that they're facing. Because our job, the way I see it, really the most important piece is trying to solve people's problems in terms of whether it's our customers or our own management team or our own employees, right? This is what a manager's job is to be a facilitator. They're not there to kind of tell people what to do. It should be a common vision and getting the right people. And I think that motivates, that helps grow motivation within the business. So we always have things to do better, but I think we're in a very good place. So I don't know how I can guess on that one, but I know one thing. I'm certain that it involves technology. I'm certain that things are going to look very different than they do today. And I think a good way of finding out what's coming for us here in Egypt and in emerging markets is to look at where developed markets or so-called developed markets are, right? Places like the United States and Great Britain. I'm a believer in that. In the end, we're all on the same journey as human beings, right? And I've heard a lot of things in the past. A lot of people say, no, the internet is not really for us. You know, we're different here. We like to watch TV. We like to read newspapers. That was 20 years ago, right? Now you see how many people are using TikTok and Instagram and social media. So I don't think there is a train that's moving. And I think the future is finance is exactly where finance is heading in all over the world, whether it's North America or in Europe. We're going in the same direction. What's different is we need to be, I think, cognizant of local culture, local fine-tuning that makes it fit, to the local cultural milieu or context. It's I don't know if I'm the right person to give advice, but I think I'll give you kind of my thoughts. It's to try to, be a sponge and learn as much as possible. And don't assume that you know everything. And, the reality is young people and the young generation today actually does know a lot more than I did when I started. So I am always amazed and impressed by the knowledge that the young generation brings and the confidence they bring. I think it's real and it's inspiring to me. At the same time, it's important to not assume that you know everything, right? And this is a mistake that I made when I was younger, and I think it's common, right? That we think we know everything, and I've grown to learn that nobody knows everything. That there is always something to learn, and to kind of really get into the details. You're not going to jump in straight from university most of the time into being a CEO or a vice president of a company. In order to do that effectively, you need to really get the hard work done. You need to roll up your sleeves and do some things that aren't always going to be the funnest thing in the world, but that's how you learn the details of a business and the operation, and that's how you can grow. And I think today young people can do that much quicker than I did, right? I think they have more tools at their fingertips. So I think with that attitude, I think there's so much to do. I don't think there is a limit to what they can do. Well, I think a good way to start is to try to understand where you want to go. And it's not always going to stay the same. It's good to have a goal in mind, an objective for yourself of what you want to do in 5 years. And that could change in another year. Maybe it's a different thing. But having a goal in mind is really important. I think one of the saddest things to see sometimes is someone who doesn't have that, right? Who's kind of going day to day about they go to work, it's a 9-to-5 job, and they go home, and I think this is where you lose a lot. And having an objective and then working backwards from that objective. No matter what you're doing, right, there is a way of getting, going from point A to B to Z, in the end, which is your objective. And it's really getting the work done, right? So if you're in banking, get a job in banking. Understand that process, even if it's entry-level work, right? You don't have to jump in immediately at the manager level, and prove yourself every step of the way. Obviously it's not easy, and you're going to face challenges, but part of, I think, what I value a lot is facing difficulty. We don't talk enough, I think, in our part of the world about difficulty and failure and disappointment, but you hear about that a lot in American entrepreneurs, for example, or European entrepreneurs. They talk a lot about their failures because that's how we can polish ourselves, and that's how we learn. So it's okay to have difficult days. It's okay to have difficult, months sometimes, but having a goal in mind ahead keeps you going. So I think the importance of always having something further, not feeling like I don't have anything there I'm working for, but always looking at the bigger picture, and staying positive, right? It's obviously it's not easy. We live in difficult times. The economic situation is challenging, but really getting up every morning and having a positive attitude and thinking of where you want to go in 5 years, that helps you, gives you more motivation. Wow, well, there's a lot of things that we want to change by the nature of who we are, right? We're a fintech company, we're in payroll. DoPay is we feel we're revolutionizing the way people get paid and the way companies do payroll payments. So just the fact that we exist is the way we envision, right, of the world changing. I don't want to live, I don't accept a world where as a CFO or a finance professional in a business, that when I transfer my employees' salaries, I have to wait for the weekend to be over. Or if it's the Eid or a holiday, that I have to wait until the holiday's over for people to get paid. We live in a different world. When I make a payment, it should arrive to my employees in minutes, right? This improves all kinds of things. It improves my cash management as a finance professional. It helps employees feel better. Someone who is paid on time and doesn't have to wait through delays gives me also better employee retention. So as a company, I don't have to spend money on recruiting and backfilling and replacing employees. So just really don't accept, I don't accept what most of us accept today in Egypt or in emerging markets about payroll and about payments and about finance. There is a way we should demand the best practice. We should demand, and we deserve, as finance professionals, we deserve the very best service that people have around payroll payments anywhere in the world. And there is no reason we shouldn't have it. It's there, it exists. Well, look, I've learned already so much, and we're only halfway done through the day. I had the pleasure of also watching Brian's keynote speech today, and how he talked about CFOs needing to be really advisors to the business and operators, and how he plotted the whole emergence of the CFO as a function in a business. I didn't know that. I assumed there were always CFOs, right? Ever since I was around, there was always a CFO. But no, this concept of really the difference between an accountant, which is what existed in the past before the 1960s, to today, where you need a CFO. CFO is someone who is strategic, who's advisory, who's really an operator, who's there to support the business. So I think there is so much of, I really don't have other things to recommend because I think it's amazing to have these types of gatherings. It's so important for learning, for continuing education, for networking. So for me, it's been already invaluable, and I look forward to a lot more.